Ciao Juventini of the world, my name is Giuseppe, welcome back on the channel. I hope you're all doing well. It's Monday, start of a new week, and this week could potentially be an interesting one. Because if last week we were speaking about renewals, Dean Huijsen and Joseph Nongué, it was also our first official sale, because Kulusevski is officially not anymore a Juve player, but a Tottenham player, 30 million euro sold by Juventus. This week could be potentially an interesting one if we are speaking about having clear ideas about the real players that we want. We are speaking about fullbacks, but also about the midfield, while we are continuing to selling the players that we don't want anymore in our team because they are not part of the project, but also understanding who can be the big name that potentially could be sacrificed to make sure that the financial books are looking better than they are at the moment, reaching the objective that we have set ourselves, or at least that the ownership have set to the new management. Anyway, we'll speak about a lot of names. Parisi, we'll speak about Castagne, we'll speak about Milinkovic-Savic, because we are giving up on one big name. We go after you putting a maximum of like. By the way, yesterday I didn't do a video. I told you I took a day off. I watched Netherlands versus Italy with two players that I was really monitoring. But except of that, I didn't do anything. So yesterday, you saved the maximum of like. Put them on the video of today. You know it. Minimum objective 500. If you didn't yet, subscribe to the channel because we start now. With Gazzetta dello Sport, I speak about two players. Important one for the future of Juventus. On top of the page, we see Davide Frattesi. On the bottom, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. Why these two players? Because in a way or another, they are entering the future of Juventus. If Davide Frattesi is a player that has been monitored now since 2 or 3 seasons, with especially last season that Juventus was really insisting to have the midfielder of Sassuolo, looks like Inter is taking the lead. They are really close to sign Davide. He will not anymore be a potential new midfielder of Juve. For what reason? Because when Juventus sat down with Carnevali, the sporting director of Sassuolo, they understood it clearly. Inter is on the player, Milan is on the player, even Napoli is on the player, Roma is on the player, and even if Roma is in difficulty to sign him, well, the team that will sign Frattesi is obliged to give 30% of that money to Roma, because we know it, he's an ex-Roma player, and that's written on his contract. Anyway, Juventus understood that the competition is big, and instead of being able to negotiate from 35 going towards 30, well, it looks like the picture is now from 35 it's going more and more towards 40, and that's a big problem, especially if Davide Frattesi is doing also well with the national Italian team, because yesterday he scored his first goal with Gli Azzurri. So we are giving up there. On the other side, maybe the fact that we are giving up on Davide is opening, or let's say reopening, the dream Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. When I'm speaking about dream, I'm really speaking about his dream, because that's the word of Sergej. Juve, ci sono. Juve, I am here. We know it. The key, and we have to be really fast on that key, is Adrien Rabiot, that Max Allegri, but also Juventus, they really want to continue it with one more year. The people will tell me, for what reason, Beppe? Well, quite easy. If you're taking the stats in our hands, it's sure that he was MVP of last season. He grew a lot. He was probably our best player in terms of productivity, assist, and also the goals. He did fantastically well. And also, you are not obliged to go on the mercato, signing a player, paying a value of 30, 40 million, if not more, for a player of the caliber of Rabiot, where it's still a question mark, because you don't know how he will perform at Juve, and especially because the choices are quite limited on the mercato. So Rabiot will have to give his answer to Juve a few days more, 10 max, until the end of the month, but we have to be fast. If Rabiot is saying no, and I believe at the end he will not accept, well, there is a name, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, that is back. A player that has always been monitored by Juve, loved by Max Allegri, loved by the majority of the fans. It's a player that when you are starting to play your fantacalcio, you always start with Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, a player that in Serie A, he was not unknown to do 11 goals and 11 assists, able to play in that three-man defense regardless on the left On the right, a player that has vision, that is physical, not a lot of injuries during the year, a player that is consistent, of course, a player that Lotito asked always a lot of money of. And maybe the doubt that he's 27, if not 28, a player that you will have difficulties to resell in the future if you are making him a 4 or 5 year contract. So in terms of profit for the future, you know that it will be quite tough. And also a player that when he's reaching high level with the national team of Serbia or even Lazio in Champions League, had maybe a bit of difficulties to perform at high level. And that's the question mark, how will he perform at Juve? Anyway, Milinkovic-Savic is a target for Juve, especially giving up on Frattesi, and the price for the very first time ever could be lower than 40 million euro requested by Lotito. For what reason? Because Lotito is not stupid. In the past, he always found a way to renew the contract of Sergei, and every time that he renewed, he was putting that selling price really high. Now, this time, Sergei has absolutely no intention to renew with Lazio. He believes, champions or no champions, that his time to arrive at Juve has finally come. And that's an important one, because he wants to probably join the city where his brother is playing, in Torino. We know it. When he has a few days of holiday, he loves to go to Torino, in Piazza San Carlo, drinking a coffee, watching his brother playing with his nephew. It can be a good one, but also he always said that he would love to join the biggest club in Italy, speaking about Juve. Now, that being said, a few months ago, I made a video explaining why I loved Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, but why it could be potentially a risk, and why I would probably say attenzione, pay attention. And I would love that Juventus, in a moment of difficulties, is maybe opening their eyes a bit more than the Italian soul, maybe thinking about another country, another young player that can give you something. And I was thinking maybe about Thuram, not Lilian Thuram, ex-Juve player, but maybe his son, the one that is playing at Nice. Kevin Thuram, great player, young player, did fantastically well with Nice. Look, this one could be a cheap, not that cheap, but a cheap signing, a smart signing, and someone that can give you what you are expecting. Speaking about Max Allegri, I believe that he can have the technical and tactical abilities and physical abilities to satisfy Max Allegri. Imagine Thuram with Pogba, with a Locatelli, with a Fagioli, maybe with a Miretti, would be, and a Rovella, don't forget about Rovella, could be a really beautiful midfield. Anyway, at the moment this is just me speaking about an idea and not what Juventus is monitoring. Anyway, how could Juventus 23-24 looks like if we are looking at Gazzetta dello Sport? Well, they are going with a 3-5-2 with Milinkovic-Savic in that role. Pogba, Locatelli, Milinkovic-Savic with on the right side, and we already spoke about him 2 days ago, Castagne, Timothy, with SB options Vasquez or Odriozola. Well, not bad if you're looking at that, but I have a big problem with that. We are continuing to play a 3-5-2, which I have no problem with. I love 3-5-2. I have always been a big fan of 3-5-2. I don't really believe in you can't win in Europe with a 3-5-2. So I really appreciate a 3-5-2, but my problem is that Allegri doesn't believe in a 3-5-2. He believes in a 3-5-2 that becomes a 5-3-1-1. Because he's always looking for that balance, always looking for that stability, always looking to not leave 3 men only in the back. So you have always your wingers that are obliged to go back, and that's why if you have a player like Federico Chiesa, and now we are entering in the Federico Chiesa chapter, well, you have difficulties because Federico Chiesa or whoever is playing like a Kostic on the left or whoever is playing on the right like a Quadrado, playing with 5 men in the midfield, 2 of them are obliged to go back, with one slightly a bit higher, one slightly a bit lower. And that's one of the big problems of that 3-5-2 in the mind of Allegri. So I would prefer, and that's what I believe, that we will not play with a 3-5-2, but we are going towards a 4-man defense, which I would appreciate much more, with Castagne possibly on the right side, with Parisi possibly on the left side, and then giving the opportunity to finally play Federico Chiesa in his best position. And that's why Tutto Sport is speaking about Buongiorno Chiesa. Good morning Chiesa. Good morning church, let's say. Why? Because Buongiorno is a player from Torino that made his official debut with Italy yesterday and did really well. But also Federico Chiesa that entered in the second half and changed totally the game with his way of playing. And we had the opportunity to admire a player that we were really in love with. He scored a goal. He did fantastically well. He's feeling really great. We all remember that last game against Udinese. We saw the game of yesterday against the Netherlands. Federico Chiesa, there is no doubt. He's a left or sometimes a right winger, but an attacking one. He's not a left back. He's not a right back. He's not a full back. He's a player that needs to play up. Then, do I want to put all the blame on Max Allegri? Do I want to enter the banter and the joke and the criticism that every single player that arrives at Juve, Allegri is transforming in left back? Well, absolutely not, because I think I'm a bit more mature than that. I am thinking that Max Allegri was obliged to make a choice last season, playing with a three-man defense to have solidity. But I told you, he doesn't like that 3-5-2 thinking offensively. This one you can blame on Allegri. So he's expecting from his players that are playing on the left and on the right to go down to support the team when we are pressed, when the opposition has the ball, which happened unfortunately too much. As Federico Chiesa, and we saw it for 90% of the season, was not at his peak level, he had to make some sacrifices, because also that idea of playing with Di Maria up front in a 4-3-3 without Pogba, he was obliged to give up on that model of four-man defense. And that's why the players that were entering parts of the game, because Chiesa, how many times did he play the full game? Same as Di Maria, these players were obliged to sacrifice themselves. And that's why I don't want to have the risk anymore to play a 3-5-2 with Federico Chiesa playing on the left or on the right, because with Max Allegri, and this is something again that we can blame on him, if you're playing the 3-5-2, you will be obliged to play up and down, and this is not in the characteristics of Federico Chiesa. Now, we go towards another chapter. Manna, chi farà i gol? Manna, who will score? Because if Milik is that close to become again, and probably this time officially, a Juve player, what are the last details that we are speaking about? In how many years we will pay Milik? And this happened also with Tottenham, but there is a certainty at 99% Milik will become an official Juve player. Well, the other ones are at risk, Dusan Vlahovic and Federico Chiesa, even if Moise Kean at 90% according to Tutto Sport will continue to wear black and white. Well, the two other ones are at risk. If we go towards a 4-3-3, Federico Chiesa needs to stay. He's the one that we need to start again with. If not, if we continue to play a 3-5-2, well, that's where the question marks are entering. Do you continue with Federico Chiesa, that apparently asked to his agent to have a salary increase to renew the contract from 5 million euro to 8 million euro? Of course, we will be obliged to renew Federico Chiesa if we want to continue with him, because Juventus is thinking about something, and I can't blame them. We don't want to live again the experience Paulo Dybala, that because of the fact that he was not feeling well, because of injuries, because of this, because of the high request, well, we lost one, if not 2 seasons between talking. At the end, he left for free. And this is something that Juventus is obliged to avoid. At the moment, from the rumors that I'm hearing, Federico Chiesa is not really on the market. We want to continue with Federico Chiesa. We don't want to sell him for 30 million, as I read somewhere, or 40 million. We want to put a price that is between the 50 and 60 million. And if a monster offer arrives, well, we talk about it with Federico Chiesa. What are his motivations? What are the motivations of Juve? In what kind of way will Juventus play? And then we take a decision with Federico Chiesa. Anyway, I would love to continue with Federico Chiesa. He's my first choice to remain at Juve. But of course, there are 3 parts. The selling club, the new club that wants to sign, and especially the player. These are the 3 parts involved. Anyway, if not, we are obliged to look for new strikers. And again, Mikau Daze, the player from Metz, is still there on the target list of Juventus. There is also another name that is in the eye of Juventus in terms of strikers, and we are speaking about Spendi, Albanese striker that played at Celena, scored 12 goals. Pay attention to these young players, because if there is something that Juventus is doing quite well, it's the young players, the scouts of the young players, and we saw it. Antoniozzi and Manna were fantastic. They already have proven records. Hopefully they can also do it with the first team now. Speaking about strikers, just between brackets, George Weah. My biggest regret to never see him wearing the black and white. Today he made a big interview in Gazzetta dello Sport speaking about Timothy, his son, speaking about his presidency in Libya, but also he spoke about the fact that he's and has always been a Juventino. Since the time of Platini that made him fall in love, he said, if I have a regret, if I would have loved to play with one team in particular, it was Juventus. And I will forever be a Juventino. He's saying that he's watching also the games of Juve. Well, grande George Weah. Grandissimo George Weah. Now, speaking about the last striker, Caio Jorge. A lot of time during the year you ask me, Beppe, where is and what happened to Caio Jorge? Caio Jorge is still training. He's not going on holiday. He's training as much as he can so that he can be back. The future of Caio Jorge will probably not be Juventus first team. Let's see if we will be able to loan him out. And then we speak about Parisi. That's nearly the last news. Parisi, Fabio, that this week, if not even today, there could be a meeting between Juventus and the agents and maybe Empoli. Speaking about Parisi, that could be the first one on the left. And I tell you, I am super excited about Fabiano Parisi. Another news that some will like, some will not like. Juventus is reinforcing the coaching staff with Magnanelli, ex-loyal Sassuolo player. He played there for all his career. Well, entering the staff of Max Allegri. The good news is that we are reinforcing. We're looking at other ideas. The bad news for the Allegri out people is that apparently if you have a new member in the coaching staff, it means that the decision is now nearly at 99.9% taken and you continue with Max Allegri. This was the last news of the day, ragazzi. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, so many information. Yesterday I didn't do a video, so I had to recap. Maximum of likes, subscribe to the channel. Grazie, forza. Juve.